So first of all, we need to create a material for this, and the easiest way to do it is get an image similar to this one. So it's divided into multiple images. So you need to make sure this is a power of 2 image. So that means something like 512 by 512 or 1024, something like that. And you can imaginary divide this into even squares, and each of the blood splatters is in its own little square. So you have multiple images in one. If you can't find any, you can create something like this as well yourself, obviously. So if you have an image like this, you want to import it into Unreal Engine, and then we're going to create a material. So call it something like a Blood Sprites material, and let's open it up. Now first you want to select this node for the material itself, and you want to make sure that the blend mode is set to translucent. And then you want to scroll down and you want to enable the use with particle sprites flag over here. So tick that one as well. Then you can look for a particle color node and plug it right into the base color. From the alpha over here, is that the alpha? I'm not sure, but drag off here and look for a multiply node. And if you have this multiply node, you want to plug in a particle sub UV node. So if you right click and look for particle sub UV, you can select this node and you want to plug it into the B pin. If you have the node selected, you want to make sure you select your blood splatter image over here. So that's how we set up our blood sprites material. Let's save it and close it down. And now we need to create a particle system. So if it's done saving, there we go. So let's right click and I'm going to create a new particle system. Let's call this a blood splatter. And let's open it up. Now let's set up this particle system, and we're going to work our way down this list over here. So first select the required node, and you want to select your blood splatter material over here. So look for the blood splatter material and enable it. And then scroll down to the duration part over here, and for the emitter loops you want to set it to 1. And then scroll down a bit more till you get to the sub UV section over here, and for the interpolation method you want to set it to random. And for the sub image horizontal and vertical, you want to make sure that you refer to your image. So over here I can divide it into 4 by 4 images. Although the bottom row is empty, you need to make sure you enter 4 by 4. So go back over here to the sub UV section, and horizontal and vertical is 4 by 4. And we should be good to go for required. So let's move on to the spawn node, select it over here, and for the rate distribution you want to set it to constant, and then you want to set it to 0 over here. And for the burst list, so that's a little bit down, you want to add 1 element and expand it, and for the count you want to set it to 1 and leave the other one at -1, that's fine. Then we are going to add an event generator, so right click over here and look for the event generator. Select this new node over here, and for the event generator you want to add 1 event, so add an array element and let's expand it, and we're going to set the type to collision. And over here you can give it a custom name, so I'm going to name it something like blood splatter collide, and that should be all we need to do in here. So let's move on to the lifetime node. For the lifetime distribution you want to set the minimum and the maximum to 0. And that should be good as well. So let's move on to the initial size. So that's the size that this decal is going to spawn at, or the sprite, I'm sorry. So we want to make sure that we don't need to change this. No, we simply want to add values in here. So let's make the minimum size something like 5 and the maximum size 15. So we can come back and adjust this later if we want to. Then move on to the initial velocity. So again, we can change it later. but we want to make sure we have something in here, so that's something like 60, 65 as the minimum velocity, and something like 80 and a little bit more upward, so 125 in the z-axis. So we can adjust this later if we want to. That's the velocity the particle or the sprite will spawn at. Then we can go to the color over live, and we simply want to add a little blood type color over here. So we're going to set it to a distribution vector constant. And then we can add a color, so something like this. And now we need to add a few more things in here. So we're going to right click and we're going to add a sub-UV image index. And if we select this one, we want to expand it. So you want to set the distribution to a float constant curve. And then you can expand it. And for the one over here, you want to set the out value to 11. So again, this refers to the image that you're using. So over here, I can select index 0 to 11. So that's what you enter here. We have a maximum value of 11 and the minimum value of 0. So we can leave that. And this should be good to go. So if you have a different sized image, you may need to enter different numbers over here. Then we need to add an acceleration. Constant acceleration, so look for acceleration, constant acceleration, select this one and something like a -1000. Again, we can change this later. And the last thing we need to add is a collision, so right click and look for collision actor collision and select this one, and then you want to set the maximum collision distance. So obviously this is also performance related. But just to make sure everything shows up right now, I'm going to crank it up. Do what you want to over here, but keep in mind it's for performance reasons as well. And you can also mess around with collide only if visible. So if they collide while you're not looking, do you want to spawn decals or not? So again, performance related. So that should be all we need to do in the BloodSplatter FX. So we're going to close it down, and we need to make sure that we spawn this FX if we shoot an enemy. So I have a get impact FX function over here, and I'm going to select my BloodSplatter FX function, particle system, if we hit the flash surface type. And then we can compile and save, and we can go to the function where you spawn your impact FX. So this is my multicast play impact FX function, and there where you have the spawn emitter at location, you can drag off the result, and you want to bind an event to OnParticleCollide. So look for this node, and then you can drag off this pin over here and you can create a custom event, and I named that BloodSplatter Collide. So you want to add a custom event over here. The first thing I did is check if it's my BloodSplatter Collide event, so that is the name that we entered in the particle system. And then you want to simply get an impact decal, so this is a function we created in the previous video. And I set it manually to a flash surface type and plug in the create dynamic material instance, so we spawn a decal at the position where this particle system collides. So if you have another way of spawning a decal, you can simply use the location and the normal from this collide event, and with that you can spawn your blood decal. So right now I think this should work. So if we shoot at our enemy, the blood should come flying off. There we go. And where the blood hits the floor, we get a nice bloody decal. So that's how you can create your own BloodSplatter FX. Thanks for watching everybody, talk to you later.